Good morning again. Today is Monday, February the 8th, 2021. I'd like to call to order the second interview for the Seminole County Public Schools Superintendent selection. Let the record reflect that all 5 school board members are in attendance. And now I'd like to introduce you all to Mr. Chad Farnsworth. Thank you for being here with us today. And thank everyone else who's in attendance today. I want to remind everyone that this is a school board work session. There is no public input. We'll be asking questions in roll call order, which would be Member Sanchez, Member Kraus, Vice Chair Pennock, and Member Calderon, then myself. We'll go one by one. Please ask the same questions of the second candidate that we asked of the first. And we will start with you, Member Sanchez.
Hi, good morning and welcome to Seminole County. How do you currently obtain input from your staff, school administrators, teachers, parents, and the business community? And what efforts are made to solicit input from students?
I think communication is the key issue. So we make sure that we have open channels of communication with all of our stakeholders that you listed off. Understanding where our students are at and really understanding what their needs are I think the key and the starting point to where we're making decisions in our district to make sure every decision we make is in the best interest, and without keeping those lines of communication open with them, how else will we be able to serve them properly? So it's visiting schools and talking to students, I think, is key to really keeping in touch with and keeping your finger on the pulse of what their needs are, and trying to break down those barriers to where they might feel like adults are unapproachable at times. We need to reach out to them and seek information from them and really build some strong relationships with students. As far as parents go, I think having some solid, innovative lines of communication set up to where you've got some really strong feedback cycles to where you're not only giving information, but you're very open and accessible to receive information also is very important. So making them feel that partnership with the school district, so we can build that trust and community aspect with them. Essentially we're taking care of their most valuable asset, right? So that's very important. So many different channels to communicate with them because not all parents communicate the same way. So I think you got to have a lot of variety there. Teachers, I feel like it's very important that we stay in touch with our teachers. They are our experts in the classroom where all the magic happens. So we've got to make sure that we have strong lines of communication with our teachers. And we're making decisions every day that will impact their lives and in turn impact the lives of our students. So we've got to rely on them as experts to give us quality feedback and make sure that they're not just heard, but they're actually listened to. And we put a lot of thought towards the information that they're giving us. And I think you accomplish that by, again, being visible on your campuses and developing relationships, again, with those teachers and instructors. I look forward to, if I have the opportunity to have, some chats with Chad where I come in and be able to, through learning walks, but also in some more intimate settings in the school building to where, they feel like they have a superintendent that is accessible and have some teacher focus groups is probably a really good way to communicate with them. Our community leaders and stakeholders in the community, I feel like they're embedded into a lot of the processes and procedures that we have that help support our students and our school system. So making sure that they feel part of the Seminole County Public Schools family, I think is imperative, whether it's getting out through civic groups, whether it's making really good connections at the right times with our legislators and the folks that represent us in Tallahassee. I think you've got to keep an ongoing relationship with those folks and not just contact them when you need them, because if we're working together to build our community, that's how we're going to be really successful. So what was the other group you mentioned? Is there another stakeholder group you mentioned?
I think you answered everything, and efforts are made to solicit input from students, and you mentioned all that and mentioned everything. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Member Kraus?
Good morning. It's nice to meet you. Put a face with a name. As you may or may not know, many of our facilities are near or have exceeded their service lives. With what would be your priority in addressing these needs? In addition, do you have a vision for how public education will look in 5 to 10 years? And do you support the Seminole Connect or the virtual platform as an offering for our students? Sort of a three-pronged question.
All right, gotcha.
Thank you.
We'll start with facilities. You know, as the way school looked years ago is much different than what we're evolving to, you know, pretty much every day. And it's not just under the current circumstances. We've got to keep evolving to provide proper resources for our kids and our employees. So as we see our buildings age out of their useful life, you know, it's making sure that we've really strategically set up our 5-year plan, and we've ensured that there's going to be proper funding to address those needs, and we use that funding very wisely. I see you guys, you appear to have ongoing projects pretty regularly. You know, you've got a CTE building you're should be wrapping up on one campus, or at least well into, and you've got an upcoming groundbreaking coming up, which is very exciting. So, you know, anytime you can provide those nice new state-of-the-art facilities for our kids, it's enhancing our opportunity to provide them with, you know, exploration of what they want to do with their lives. So I think it's very important that we take a very strategic and fiscally responsible approach to our facilities. As far as, you know, what it looks like 5 to 10 years down the road, I think you've got to always be looking, you know, years down the road as you lay out, you know, that other, with your capital side of your life, with your technology. It's important that we always try to stay on the cutting edge of the latest and emerging technologies for our facilities. But we don't want to dive down every rabbit hole that's pitched at us and be really naive in how we invest in innovation and technology in our schools. So I'm very careful and mindful about the current lens that we're under. I think the way we've started to use technology as school districts in the state of Florida as a result of the pandemic, it's kind of forced us in some directions. And some of that's been really great and healthy and innovative, and some ideas that we can hold on to and move forward with. But at the same time, that's not what we want education to necessarily look like for the future. I believe that, you know, the real crux of making things happen for students is that interpersonal relationships there between the teachers, educators that are providing them with service and ushering them through their educational experience. So I see a blended environment there, but at the end of the day, it's the teacher that makes the difference in the classroom, and everything else is just a tool, material, or some type of, you know, just some type of helps us facilitate the process.
Thank you, Vice Chair Pinnock.
Good morning and welcome to Seminole County. What is your vision for addressing the needs for college readiness while also providing high-quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for all students? And how do you propose we maximize a student's pathway to success?
The great news is you guys have already got a really good start on that, right? With your ePathways initiatives and how you're tailoring education to the individual needs of students and offering that wide variety of opportunities for exploration for them is nothing short of phenomenal. But we've got to stay on top of those programs to ensure that we're relevant to current industries and emerging technologies, but also that we're still making a connection to our students and their interests. So I feel like it starts with some of the amazing programs you guys have got embedded with your magnet schools, but not just your magnet schools, but also all of your schools. You can see hints of different tracks and pathways that are open for them to explore. And then as it moves into acceleration opportunities through middle school, and then, you know, the programs at the high school, which allow them to leave our world and enter the real world with the possibility of a career certificate in one hand that has them ready to go to work immediately if they want to, but also the academic credentials in the other hand to take on, you know, the post-secondary world and excel into whatever career they imagine for themselves in the future. So I think the main thing is that we're properly equipping these kids with the things I mentioned in your strategic plan: knowledge, skills, and personality traits that are going to make them solid citizens and really prepared to reinvest in our community here in Seminole County.
Thank you. Member Calderon?
Welcome to Seminole. In what specific area do you feel you could have the greatest impact on Seminole County Public Schools, and how would you initiate that impact?
I feel like one of my greatest strengths is relationship building. And so I feel like some of the most important work that we're going to do in the near future, and that there's evidence that you guys have already started down the path on, is you hear a lot about our achievement gaps, but also our work in equity, which they're two areas that overlap each other and have importance with one another also. So I feel like my ability to communicate and build relationships and make sure that I'm able to preserve the family environment that you have here to tackle those very, very difficult and sometimes sensitive issues centered around equity and pulling back the curtains on our learning gaps and achievement gaps to address those real issues. And I think that's done, and it has to be done in a very with really strong intent and in a strategic manner, so that we're introducing ideas and strategies and research-based initiatives and driving things that make sense to the people that we're serving. And if we make it a non-threatening environment and a non-threatening approach to where nobody's pointing fingers or pointing at blame, but we're just looking at the data honestly together and having that real truthful, honest dialogue where people can recognize, you know, maybe some long-standing implicit biases that are there that are standing in the way of us making progress in equity. I think I'm the right person to be able to help lead those conversations and train our other instructional leaders in the system to have those conversations also. So work in equity and closing those achievement gaps are an area that I feel like I could be really impactful with.
Thank you. One of the greatest leadership challenges is balancing a vocal minority with a silent majority on an issue. What are your thoughts on making major district decisions?
I think when you're making major district decisions, it all goes back to making the right decision for kids, whether it's their well-being from a safety standpoint or an academic standpoint. As long as you take the position of no matter what, you're going to do what's best for kids, then you can stand on that position and sleep at night. And it's something that will ultimately support our vision and our mission here in the district. That, you know, but it can't just be one person, you know, making those decisions without, you know, being well informed and working together as a team. And I know as a superintendent, there's times where, you know, you shoulder the most difficult issues and you carry the weight for the district, but you also share in the responsibility with your team to overcome and really help sometimes that really vocal majority understand we value your point of view and there are some points of validity there. However, we're charged to make sure we're doing the right things for kids at all time. So you've got to be able to stand strong sometimes when people might not always hear the things they want to hear, but we have to be that voice of reason that provides them with the things they need.
Thank you. Member Sanchez?
Alrighty. Oh, gosh, I didn't realize we went through all of them. I'm sitting here taking notes, sorry. Give an example of how you have made decisions collaboratively with all your employee groups.
Well, I make decisions across a lot of employee groups. Currently, I can use my most recent experience. I act as the chief negotiator with both of our bargaining units. And so that allows me to pretty much touch on every single position in our district. Because I also have, even with our exempt positions and our administrative positions, I have strong relationships with those folks also. So I take the approach of, how can we improve the lives of students together? So it doesn't always have to be this contentious relationship to where we're always discussing things that have to be centered around diversity. No, how do we work together as a team, as what it would be here as one Seminole family, to ensure we're doing what's best for kids together? Because sometimes I think adults start to lose sight of what's important for kids and focus too much on what they feel like is important for adults. And being able to round up all of those thoughts together and get everyone centered back on the primary focus of kids is one of my strengths, and that I have a lot of experience in.
Thank you.
Member Kraus?
The safety of our students, teachers, and staff is of paramount importance. Keeping our schools safe is our mandate. What is your position on school safety in particular, the Guardian program, and/or arming teachers and staff members with guns?
Obviously we know when school safety really took hold in the state of Florida with I feel like taking a balanced approach, to how we manage safety in the schools, as far as from a guardian standpoint and arming employees and not arming employees. One thing has to be clear. First and foremost, what we're charged to do is to provide a safe learning environment for our kids. So that absolutely has to be a priority that cannot be compromised under any circumstance. And I think, but also not having a feeling to where, our schools are no longer an educational facility and start to look more like a correctional facility. So I think we're doing a really good job in the state of Florida in most circumstances, which I'm sure you guys are also, to put in ways to harden our schools and make them safe. So those traditional ways of managing the safe environment, that our lens has changed a little bit from what it was. But also having that really good relationship with our law enforcement that's involved on our campus, I think is very important. I think resource officers and deputies on campuses are extremely important, and they're part of the educational family. And you see the things that make the headlines, but you don't necessarily see the thousands of relationships that those people do, work they're doing to keep our schools safe. So I just think it's important that we have those. The Guardian program is interesting. We have a Guardian program where I'm at now, and we've seen nothing but success from it. We feel like our guardians, because we work in partnership with our sheriff's office, and our sheriff is well invested in the training that goes into those guardians, that we kind of take a shared responsibility to make sure that, okay, this is a very viable opportunity, to complement our deputies that are on campus and provide that extra layer of safety and security. You guys have got some kind of neat pilot initiatives going on right now that I read about. It'll be interesting to see how that type of thing flushes out. But there's a whole nother side of the safety issue, which is student mental health. And I feel like you've got to make wise investments on that student mental health end and make some proactive programs to make sure that, okay, we're not just waiting for the one kid that had a bad day to show up who's had a track record that's flown under the radar. No, we're going to really get in touch with our students and build relationships and understand where they're taking, when they reach those crossroads and they take a path that could lead in a bad direction. We're going to make sure we grab them and guide them in the right direction. And that's a big piece of our student safety that we've got to make sure we're investing in.
Vice Chair Pennock.
As the educational landscape continues to change and evolve, what strategies will you implement to keep Seminole County Public Schools a high-performing district while protecting our culture?
Sorry, can you repeat it for me? I apologize.
Sure. As the educational landscape continues to change and evolve, what strategies will you implement to keep Seminole County Public Schools a high-performing school district while protecting our culture?
I think we, in a school district setting or in a school system setting, we're used to kind of an evolving environment. I definitely think what we've faced since last spring has been definitely a new experience. But I don't feel like we want to be defined by the things that came about through our transition and working through the pandemic. I think we've got to stay the course on the culture and climate that has created, Seminole County and made it a really good option for our families. So I think really honing in on what we're doing great now and what are ways that we can enhance and continue to press forward with the really great initiatives, especially in the areas of e-pathways. But maintaining that high level of expectations for our students is key. But it's very easy to provide high expectations and nobody reaches those expectations. So it's got to be granular down all the way to the classroom level to where we're working on those issues and targeting our achievement gaps and back to equity to where every day in the classroom we're providing kids with high expectations, and we're providing them with standards aligned instruction that is on grade level, and also that it connects with the students. So we've got them fully roped in doing quality work to meet those high expectations. So I think it's every day being relentless of our pursuit to improvement of instruction in the classrooms is how we're going to maintain our success.
Member Calderon.
Please describe your leadership style and specifically address your approach to delegating responsibilities.
I think my leadership style is I'm very balanced is probably the best way I could describe my leadership style. There's no question with the teams that I lead that I am the leader in the position. However, we have a free flow exchange of ideas, so we make sure that all good ideas make it to the table for discussion. And I'm a big proponent of equity of voice. So you don't have this brilliant, quiet person in the room who's never provided the opportunity to share their ideas. I really believe in a team approach to leadership, but also, like I mentioned earlier, shouldering the big necessary and carrying the weight of the bulk of just that heavy weight of responsibility when you sit in that superintendent's chair. But then we build our strategies and our plans together for our instructional leadership for kids, and then in turn celebrate our successes together.
Thank you. Describe what you believe to be the ideal working relationship with a school board, and should you have an adversarial situation with a board member, how would you resolve it?
I think it all starts with us working together as a cohesive unit. And one thing I've witnessed in watching some of you guys' meetings, the level of professionalism and the level of kindness and the ability that you guys have to really leverage each other's strengths is very impressive. So I feel like it's important that I get to know each one of you very well and have a really solid understanding of what's important to you and the priorities that you bring to the table. And then it's my job to pull those together and drive out the mission and vision that you guys have helped put together. But I feel like our relationship is probably the most important relationship at the top level of leadership district. that we have to build a sense of community and pride, and so that our community sees and has confidence in the leadership that they have chosen to put in charge, and that they trust us with their most valuable asset, which is their kids. So I just put a very heavy emphasis on the quality of relationship with you guys. And if we run into, items that we disagree on, or perhaps that we need to discuss more, I think that's the key, is having that open dialogue to be able to, arrive at a spot that we're all comfortable with. And you guys might lead me to a position where I realize, okay, well, that is what's best for kids. But having that open dialogue is just the key. So at the end of the day, we're always doing what's best for our students.
Thank you. Member Sanchez?
Can you please give an example of how you've made decisions collaboratively with your employee groups?
I'll use, I don't want to go back. It seems like I'm always working with my employee group, so I don't want to lean too hard in my current role position, but probably more is from a superintendent cabinet position and how we work together as a team. Working with our teachers is very important to us, and part of the misunderstanding that occurs with them, as they're focused wholly on their lives in the classrooms with kids. So I put a really big emphasis on providing them with access and going to them to answer their questions. So one of my really great experiences is going out into the schools and sitting with groups of teachers and just giving them full opportunity to bring anything to the table they want. And one thing I found that was very powerful was going out with them and helping them understand how we're funded as a school district, because a lot of times they get, they're not always getting their information, from the right places, and they start to lose focus. They're reading a lot of articles, they're on their social media. But when it gets back to what's really happening within our family, it's, my experience was sitting with groups of teachers in media centers and just, opening the floor to them to address their concerns. That's probably not only one of my most impactful, but most rewarding experiences in working with an employee group.
Thank you. Member Krause?
Yes, just as a follow-up, Member Sanchez, I think that you asked that question already. I think you're on question 3.
I asked that? Are you serious? I'm so sorry.
Whichever answer sounded best, just that.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally out of it. So sorry. Okay, so question 3. 2020-21 has been, of course, the most unusual year. And what are your major concerns as the district moves forward? My apologies also.
I think my major concern is learning loss. And I'm really excited to see what plans the district here has put together to manage that learning loss. We've got to use really strategic measures and really directed measures to dial down to what every student's need is, all the way to the individual child, and see where that learning loss exists. I think it's going to be different for every kid. Just seeing it as a parent, I mean, it's different within my 2 kids. So I know within a household where, they're more challenged from a resource standpoint, that the learning loss is likely to be even greater than what we can imagine. So I don't think we need to underestimate it, but we just need to make sure that we're getting kids back to where they need to be as quick as possible. And also making sure from a mental health standpoint that these kids, we're looking at them not just from an academic standpoint, but what is their mental health well-being, and what are some of those, immediate needs they have in their life that we can at least recognize and lend resources where we can.
Thank you.
Member Krause?
Thank you. Consistency, I have trouble saying that word. Consistency in implementing our district and state policies is important. Tell me about a time where you were faced with direct information that staff either did not follow our policies that were outlined or they interpreted them differently. How did you solve this issue? And walk me through the steps that you took, please.
I think whenever, through the years in my position, as a superintendent, as a district level administrator, and even in the schools, I've constantly been involved in the statutes, the Florida statutes, and have a good grasp of our board policies. So I don't expect every person to have the depth of knowledge that I do in those areas. However, you've got to have a pretty good working knowledge of our guidelines and our parameters and how we provide services to our community. So there have been times where, folks have strayed away from school board policy, not out of any ill intent, but really out of a lack of knowledge and understanding. So really dependent upon the impact, blame if necessary. We can handle that issue later. But I feel like if I have a leader who's made a mistake, we're going to come in and step one, you're hopeful that they're high quality and they own their mistake. But we identify what the mistake has been that they've made, and then we look at, okay, what is the damage here, and how are we going to fix it and clean it up? So stepping through that process, we arrive at somewhere, hopefully, that hasn't had too much impact and hopefully no impact down to the kids. But we make sure that we learn from those mistakes and we don't. I think about, audit findings where perhaps I remember a situation where a food service account was mismanaged and we were showing a $400,000 loss in an area. I had a new leader coming in, and she and I got together and said, okay, let's identify where this problem came from and pinpoint it so it doesn't happen again. And before we knew it, we had our food service back in the black and things were functioning and running well. But we knew in the back of our mind, okay, we need to make sure that we're not allowing those mistakes to happen.
Vice Chair Pinnock.
What are your spending priorities?
Spending, you said? But I think anytime we're talking about spending, I think we've got to be very mindful that we're not creating reoccurring expenditures with no source of reoccurring revenue. So, with that thought in mind, our priority has to be a return on investment for programs that are working with our kids. The priority is to get those dollars as close to the classroom as possible, and any of our spending that we have should be directed towards accomplishing the vision and the mission of the school district, so which are definitely aligned to doing what's best for kids. So all of my spending priorities will be focused first on programs for kids, close to the classroom as possible.
Thank you. What would be some of the first actions you would take as a newly appointed superintendent?
I think coming in, that relationship building piece is key. So my first actions would be to get out into the schools. I've got to see what is the normal culture for teaching and learning in the school district. And I've got to see, where you guys' priorities are at in action. So really getting out in the schools and being a visible leader and helping people understand that, you guys are a well-oiled functioning system, and just because there's been an exchange of leadership at the top, that doesn't mean that by any means the overall vision of the district has been majorly altered. Just getting out there and helping people understand they've got a superintendent with a servant's heart that loves and cares about children and wants the best for our workforce would be.
Thank you.
Madam
Member-
Chair, could I ask my
Yes,
third
please.
question?
Member Calderon.
What strategies and interventions would you likely use to raise the academic achievement of our lowest performing students district-wide, and specifically if you could address the reading at all levels?
I think it's very important that when we're putting together interventions that we're very intentional about that work. So we're not just throwing out blanket interventions that don't apply to all students. So I think identifying and working with our school leaders to really grasp, all right, what their culture and their population needs in the area of literacy is very important. So we look at, our subgroups of students and really take a mindful approach of how we're addressing each one of those subgroups of students all the way down to the individual child where it's really tailored. But, for instance, if you look at from an ELA standpoint, which is arts and that big literacy component there, we've got a subgroup in our African American student population that 58% currently are below a level 3 grade level level. So, and what's even more concerning is when you get down to the level 1, to where you've got the possibility of students moving along through your system without proper literacy skills to be functional readers. Those are things we've got to really get down into the weeds and have specific interventions to where our building administrators and instructional leaders are dialing into that instruction and working collaboratively with their teachers to make sure that those lessons are aligned to grade level, where we're exposing even the kids that are behind to grade level work and really dialing into what those students' needs are. From a literacy standpoint, I feel like we've really got to get them as early as we can and establish those literacy standards as early as possible. If I could have every kid in pre-K in our system, wouldn't that be nice, right? So just really getting the value of literacy implemented early, and then providing those structures age appropriately all along the way to support them as readers, it's really going to help them in all the other disciplines and core curriculums along the way. And one thing that's been impressive about you guys is we have no time to waste with any student. So you can see you guys are addressing those needs even on the top end, because your subgroup graduation rates are on the same incline and improvement as their white peers. So it's really neat that you're addressing those. You're not just saying, oh, it's too late for those kids and their literacy needs. You're addressing those needs at the top end also. And we're taking advantage of every single moment we have left with those kids in our system.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I overlooked you.
No worries.
Member Sanchez.
Right. Please describe your thoughts on how finance and business functions interrelate with the instructional side of kindergarten through 12th environment, and how does this affect choices about budget and finance?
I think it's great when your finance department and your budget departments, they know the value that they have and their connection to the student experience. And I think you guys have that here. It's really keeping a close eye on that return on investment with the programs that you guys are devoting yourselves to and really providing to kids. The fact that finance and budget is not operating in a silo to where they just feel like, they're just the ones that count the money and hand it out. No, the budgeting process has to be a family affair also, right? So everyone's priorities, we have to measure their priorities and make sure that our school leaders are dialed in at the school level to what's important to their culture. And again, that we listen to them and understand what their needs are and as they're trying to accomplish their goals at the school level. So I think it's just taking an all-encompassing approach to budget and finance and being really, really mindful and good stewards of the tax dollar, because we've got to build confidence in the community that, wow, look at all these great things Seminole County is able to do, but man, they're doing it in a really fiscally responsible way. I think it's a huge part of our system.
Thank you.
Member Kraus.
When thinking about your current position, what is one thing you wish you had known before accepting that role?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
When thinking about your current position, what is one thing you wish you had known before accepting that role?
You know, I love my current position, and I've found ways to adapt to that position, and I've learned a lot from being in it, and how to work very closely with our bargaining units and our teachers union and folks like that. So I'm not sure anything could have prepared me to know exactly what I was getting into. You know, I had been in the bargaining process from a superintendent standpoint, but just being there day to day and being that initial driver with those folks has been interesting. You know, but I have a whole another side of my life in my current position as in with employee relations, and that deals more with when our employees run into trouble, right? Or when we need to provide them with additional assistance. So I can't really say there's anything I wish I knew. I just can say that it's been a great learning experience in those positions. But one thing I really want to impress upon everyone is that I've never relinquished my connection to the student as an instructional leader. So what I do every day is try and leverage my responsibilities in my position to where we're making sure that it's at the forefront of our work every day, that the things we do are important to kids. And then I also participate in learning walks with our academic teams. And I visit schools and principals and talk to kids and make sure that I have a finger on the pulse of what their needs are, because I'm the gatekeeper to the district as far as bringing in quality personnel to service our needs. So really, it's just been an extraordinary experience, and there's nothing that I regret walking into.
Vice Chair Pinnock.
What steps will you take to increase student achievement while reducing achievement gaps and increasing graduation rates of minorities, including students with disabilities? Sorry. What steps will you take to increase student achievement while reducing achievement gaps and increasing graduation rates of minorities, including students with disabilities?
Yeah, I think the first step is listening and learning. I feel like I've got to really get my arms around the current work of the instructional leaders that you guys have in play now, because there's evidence of success where you guys are really focused on those areas of closing achievement gaps now. So I want to be very cautious that I'm not coming in and not having respect for the work that's already been done. So I'll be looking to complement and figure out ways to enhance the current strategies that you guys are using. You know, when you speak directly to students with disabilities, big part of my heart as an educator. I think it's important that we really focus in on our students with disabilities, and they deserve high expectations also. And so we make sure that, you know, just because a child brings a certain set of circumstances to the table for us does not mean that they cannot achieve and function on the same levels of our students without disabilities. So, and we need to showcase their talents whenever possible, and we need to, you know, leverage their strengths to help them reach, you know, their undefined potential also. So it's very important that a lot of times the room that you have left, and really, you know, you get to 94%, for a graduation rate, there's not a whole lot of room left unless you're diving in and really taking on the most challenging situations that you have and turning those challenges into opportunities. And our students with disabilities are an amazing opportunity for us to continue to improve our graduation rate. You know, years ago, everybody panicked when that special diploma went away, and you could no longer, you know, kind of shelter your students with disabilities. No, they need to be on the forefront of our work. That's where our inspiration, a strong source of inspiration can be, and really providing those kids with the services they deserve. And when we do that, we're going to increase their graduation rates also. You know, some of the work I'm most proud of was when I was a superintendent in another district. I was able to double the graduation rate with our students with disabilities. And all it really was engaging those students and those families and placing a new level of expectations, but also coupling that with proper resources and support, and really leveraging some of the resources from around the state for kids with disabilities. And we were able to do some amazing things with those kids.
Member Calderon.
What do you consider the biggest accomplishment of your career to date? And is there anything that you would like to change or would have done differently?
I think the biggest accomplishment of my career to date was the work that I did in Bradford County as superintendent, taking a district that was financially struggling, that did not have a real connection to the community, and a community that was struggling to really put emphasis on the education of their children, but to really tie all those things together and get a community rallied behind doing what was best for kids. So the work that I did in Bradford County, I'm extremely proud of, and not change a thing there. And it was interesting because it was elected a little different than what you guys have here. But there's not a thing I would change, because everything I did there was always with the... as far as things I would change, because my educational career, I mean, I picked up value every step of the way. You know, my time in the classroom, that's where I learned how to reach students and make differences in their lives and knock down barriers so I could hold them to high expectations. That's where I learned, you know, the value of a teacher's voice and how they're experts and that they need resources and they need to be part of the decision-making process that we make. My time dealing at the building level as an instructional leader, you know, developing curriculum, working shoulder to shoulder again with teachers, and really honing and fine-tuning the instruction that's going on in the classroom, but also learn how to connect with parents and families and provide them with support and services. And then becoming having the opportunity as a superintendent to gain some expertise in every area was extremely valuable, and what I feel like is probably the most important thing I bring to the table. But then even in my current position now, where I'm functioning in a wide variety of roles, there's not much I would change about that process, because I feel like it's essentially brought our paths together here today. And I feel like that's what's prepared me to be the right leader for you guys at the right time, to help move forward and continue you guys' legacy of excellence.
As the superintendent of Seminole County Public Schools, describe to me, please, how you would envision a typical day, week, or month.
I just laugh because a typical day.
It's not typical.
That's right. Every day is a new day in the world of education. You know, in a perfect world, every day would start at a school, right? And being that visible leader and that everybody needs to know is there, supporting them and listening to them every step of the way. But I think that's another thing that lends towards, you know, having sat in the seat and understanding the role of the superintendent. I think you've got to understand that no day is going to be typical. And, I think of three different things when you look at the role of the superintendent. The responsibility and the weight of the decisions that you make every day and the impact and the potential of those decisions on students' lives is heavy. So you got to have somebody that can carry that weight, and I feel like I can. Also with that, the commitment to make your lives all things Seminole County Public Schools. That's got to be your desire, and I certainly have that desire. And then lastly, the sacrifice. It's a 24/7 nights and weekends position, and really that's what my family's designed for. Is what we do. We're educators, and we're a long line of educators, and I look forward to taking on those responsibilities and working through opportunities and hope for many typical days, but knowing that a typical day is, having that great privilege of facing new opportunities to make sure things are going right for kids.
Thank you. Member Sanchez.
Seminole County is at or near the top of Florida and in the nation's public school system in most categories. Understanding that any institution can improve, and from what your knowledge is of Seminole County Public Schools, what goals will you establish to improve the system overall or in any specific areas that will make us number one in Florida and among the top school districts in the nation?
Yeah, I think, just first of all, looking at Florida and being the top school district in Florida, that window gets pretty small at the top. And I feel like if we want to be the best and be number one, those opportunities that I mentioned earlier about really facing up to the achievement gaps and addressing courageously any issues of equity that we have in the district, that's what's going to make us the difference. If we want to be first, we've got to be the first to show significant progress in those areas. And I wholeheartedly believe that you can do that. Because some of the districts that are ranked above you, they don't have the same opportunities that we have. I mean, the fact that we've got a diverse clientele in our student population, that's what makes Seminole so great. It's the best things about Florida rolled up right here into the central part of the state. And if we support all of those families and really have a learning environment that allows students to follow their interests and explore their interests, and we're relevant to what we need to do with the industry standards, our industry interests and innovation, then we're going to do great things and we're going to be number one. From a national standpoint, it's kind of strange when you start looking at, okay, well, how do we rank nationally? Because sometimes it's hard to measure that. But from what it appears from the outside is, you look at the specific areas of work that's being done in the district and say, okay, for this area of work to support our educational system, how can we showcase the innovative approach that we're taking for this specific kind of work? And just looking at, like you guys STEM. Being ranked number one in STEM is amazing. So, sticking with those initiatives and keeping those going, but also looking for ways that we can become the best and looked upon across the nation is very important also. And I think you can kind of measure it by the major international companies that are coming into Seminole County, and believe it or not, this is the reason that they're coming here, because you guys can supply a workforce that they can continue to be successful in their organizations. So looking for ways that we can stand out on national stage is always going to be a priority.
Thank you.
Member Krause.
Thank you. So communication with all stakeholders is so important, especially with the board. As you may or may not know, Dr. Griffin, calls us with both good news and bad news to keep us in the update. Michael Lawrence is in charge of our communications department, and he is able to get messages out to our community parents, stakeholders within minutes. Would you continue this communication style and expand? And secondly, are you a morning person?
I am a morning person.
Oh, Jill.
There's no, there's not much time for downtime, right? So I'm a morning person, I'm a late night person, I'm pretty much always on. So, but no, it's obvious that you guys have good communication with current superintendent, because it plays out in everything you do. I would hope to continue all of those lines of communication. You might get tired of me calling you, but I'll figure out where that happy medium is. But what I think is key is that you guys have taken on a huge responsibility as being board members and representing your constituents. People look to you for answers to questions many times. And I know you guys get a wide variety of questions, so preparing you for all of them might not be possible, but allowing you guys to turn around and get good quality feedback back to the people in the community as quick as possible is very important. But also keeping you in tune with emerging issues moment by moment in the district. You need to know when students have been in accidents. You need to know when we have people that have gotten into trouble. You need to know when all of a sudden, we're fixing to be commended in the media for some great things that we've done. So that way you're not getting blindsided by issues that, we see come up on a daily basis. So I think it's very important that we keep those constant lines of communication open, really 24/7.
Thank you. Member Pinnock, Vice Chair Pinnock.
What do you think are 3 challenges that education faces today, and how will you lead SCPS to overcome them?
I hate to sound repetitive, but the challenges that we're taking on as opportunities it goes back to that, being instructional leaders and really taking hold of the achievement gaps and equity, because those are the issues that are going to take us those last few steps along the way to ensuring that all students have access and experience the quality educational process that they deserve. So I hate to drag you back through all of that, but it's I feel like it starts with being a listener. If we're always in our system coming up with action plans and ideas and things we can do to overcome those achievement gaps and fix equity, and then you've got a group over here in the community who feels like, wow, we feel really disconnected. If they would just listen to us. We're trying to tell them where our issues are at and what needs to be addressed. So the thing is, both of those activities take a tremendous amount of time. So my strategy is to incorporate those two things and make sure that both understand what one is doing and what the other one's doing, and mesh that work together to where we're putting together really good plans that have all positive intentions, but they're really informed by what the real needs are of the people in our community. And it's like you can't have people that have never experienced inequities making plans for people that have experienced inequities, right? So just merging together and understanding we're one Seminole family and we're going to address these gaps together, and your children are going to be successful no matter what.
Member Calderon.
How important is it, and what specific roles have you played personally in dealing with your legislature, congressional delegation, county and city officials?
I think it's one of the most important relationship pieces that we have. I've always made it a priority to have good, solid relationships with our legislators. And it's not, as I was thinking, reflecting back, because I had a feeling a question like this would come about, and I thought about my first time, the Superintendent's Association, we were in Tallahassee, and they're like, go meet with your legislators, schedule an appointment, and make sure they understand your priorities. So I come bopping in, first time, really significant time in Tallahassee, and all of a sudden I sit down between, the Pool Cleaners of America and somebody that from some other obscure organization. I said, okay, I quickly realized I was going to fall somewhere in line with their priorities of the day with these folks. And I was like, that's not good enough. So I realized immediately that, establishing relationships that are ongoing with your legislators and constantly conveying your priorities to them and how they interact with the community's priorities and needs so that we're all working together as a community to bring the things home that we need from Tallahassee. And it's not just our local legislators. You need to be working with the folks that are in charge of education committees and educational finance. So really developing those relationships in Tallahassee and at home with your local legislators to get the things you need are very important. Another part of that question, what was
Well,
it?
it was just the national delegation and city and county elected officials as well.
Your local city and county officials are very important because, one municipality might not have the same culture as another municipality when you get into the communities in Florida. So we need to be in touch with each community and understand what each community's needs are. So we're supporting the culture of that community the best way that we can. And you look at, it goes back to our relationship with law enforcement. I mean, our relationship with the sheriff's office is extremely important. We have got to be working in partnership every single day and make sure it's a functional partnership and a healthy relationship that's maintained there because the safety of our students is the most important thing that we do every day.
Talk about employee recruitment and retention, and what ideas do you bring to the table?
All right, I love this because it's the fun part of my job that I currently sit in. I work on retention and recruitment of educators on a daily basis. As you know, prior to going into the pandemic, a lot of people were panicking because we had a mass teacher shortage. And I don't think that's just disappeared, right? I feel like your schools of education are still putting out very few education graduates these days, so there's a lot of competition for those same talented individuals coming out of the schools. So you want to make sure that you've got real strategic and innovative ways to connect with those kids that are coming out of school, but you also got to put a heavy emphasis on retaining your good quality teachers that you got right here at home. So I think balancing those two worlds is very important. And I've found that retention is really not losing touch with our teachers that, the pressure that they're experiencing in their classrooms on a daily basis is immeasurable. So they need to know that we understand what their pressures are and we're going to listen to them. And when we listen to them, we're going to react with the resources and support that they need. And a lot of times it's just hearing them and listening to them so we understand. And then from a recruitment standpoint, I feel like we've really got to use those dollars wisely, where we used to just spend money sending people on trips all over the place. Oh, we hear that there's a few good teachers up at the FAMU campus or FSU. We're going to send people up there and spend time there, and then you get there and there's a million people wanting to give them jobs. So my approach is really expanding our footprint and reaching out and using technology and leveraging innovative methods of recruiting teachers has proved to be really effective and really given us a return on our investment. And getting in the Troops to Teachers program, and also, working with the Florida Fund for Minority Teachers, and just establishing long-term relationships. Sometimes it's all about who you know and whether they're going to say Seminole County Schools is the best place for you to work. Having those relationships built and pipelines built to bring people in, I think.
Member Sanchez?
In what area specifically do you feel you could have the greatest impact, and how would you initiate that impact?
I think as the leader of the school district, people are looking to you to make sure that leader makes sense and that he's in line and in tune with the vision and mission of the district, but also of the daily occurrences in the classroom. So I think building relationships with our stakeholders and really the people we have in our schools is the most significant impact that I can make immediately. There's going to be some nerves and some anxiety about a great leader like Dr. Griffin moving along. So easing those nerves and anxiety that they've got a really balanced leader coming in that's always going to be making decisions that are best for kids is probably going to be the first initial impact that I can make. They're going to find that I'm relatable and that I understand that the pressure that they work under every day, and that I wouldn't ask them to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, and that I won't do myself. I keep my teaching certificate active because there's no telling. At any given moment, I could step in to fill the void if I had to, if I hadn't a teacher that was under an emergency circumstance. So just helping them understand that I'm a true educator at heart and that we can achieve all things together for kids.
Thank you.
Member Kraus?
Thank you. What would you consider, pardon me, an appropriate fund balance as a percentage for a 65 to 67,000 student district?
I've got a lot of experience in dealing with the percentage of fund balances, keeping my eye on those in a couple districts that I've worked in. You guys, where you sit now, in that 7 to 8% range, from what I can tell, I feel like it's healthy, but I feel like you always want that fund balance to grow a little more. I feel like somewhere in a 9 to 11% range is probably ideal, but I also know that times are tough and you've got to remain competitive with things that you're doing for compensation. So you got to be mindful of that and how people perceive what your fund balance is, and that goes back to communicating with people and really educating them on what the dollar in a school system actually means. Now, sometimes it can only be spent for certain purposes depending upon the categoricals, but that unreserved fund balance, I think you want to make sure that you're prepared for a rainy day or perhaps a pandemic, because I think you'll see a lot of the pandemic and the impacts of it are yet to be defined. So I think by having a fund balance, just when you think you've seen everything, right? But having that fund balance allows you to shoulder some of the unknown consequences that come from emerging situations like we faced with COVID. So that, I just think we got to be really good stewards of the tax dollar and make sure that we're being responsible and that fund balance is appropriate to address any need that might come about that comes down the pipe.
Vice Chair Pennock?
Covered a lot of this in previous questions. Maintaining strong relationships, partnerships, and communication with school and community stakeholders is important to this board. Please expand on your experience in building and maintaining these relationships, and how will you use that at SCPS?
I think I've always taken a pretty fearless approach to building relationships. At the end of the day, whoever you're meeting with or whoever that you're partnering with, they're a person just like you. And if the chances are if we're talking about something that's good for kids, right? So, I've had a lot of experiences to go out into the community and, sit with religious leaders or groups of pastors and just really being able, no matter what their background is, help them understand that they're very important to the work that we're doing, because one way or another, they're connected to the kids that we're serving. So that's really a strength and an experience I've had is, okay, if say you've got a sub-organization that operates outside of our organization to support kids, which any of those, right? You know, going in and talking with them about the things they're doing and building relationships so we can be supporting kids in harmony. And perhaps, you know, there might be resources they can provide to us, and there might be resources we can provide to them. But just making sure that we've got a really good functional relationship with our outside concentrations of folks that are supporting and working with kids also in the community.
Member Calderon?
You might not know this, but our Chief Technology Officer is retiring. So one of the areas that we probably haven't touched as deeply on today is technology. So coming in, your vision for technology use in the classroom, administratively, public communication, knowing technology changes minute by minute. But where do you see us going with the use of technology, especially after the pandemic?
I've heard there might be some transition there. You know, I think the way we use technology in a variety of ways across the school district, right? I want to start with the classroom because that's where it's most important. Making sure that our teachers have adequate technology in their classrooms for them to be creative and innovative with their students, I think is very important. So I like to think of it in terms of instructional technology. But at the end of the day, those are just tools. And the teacher is the primary driver of educational service and lessons in our classrooms. So I don't ever want those lines to be blurred, but I also want to make sure that teachers have the appropriate resources in their classroom. Connectivity is a huge issue. So I think keeping a real finger on the pulse of connectivity in our communities is very important. You know, at a moment's notice, you know, last spring, right, we dropped everything, sent everybody home, and then we had to figure it out from there. You know, I'm confident that you guys have learned from that experience, just like the current organization I serve in has, and we're taking steps and building plans to try and strengthen our infrastructure both inside and outside of the school district. And you know, you can get in all the weeds of, you know, making sure we're managing E-rate dollars correctly, and you know, making sure that, you know, our refresh cycles are really good for technology across the district. But one part of that you mentioned, which I think is very important, is communication. Nothing has been more powerful really through this whole pandemic situation was the ability to communicate really fast and accurately with our families and our communities and our students. So making sure we're on the front edge of technology in that area is extremely important.
Aside from filling Dr. Griffin's big shoes, what do you think would be your personal biggest challenge if you were selected as the next superintendent?
Yeah, I think probably not going to find someone that can fill Dr. Griffin's shoes. They're going to have a new set of shoes, but operate with the same style and grace that he does, and so people have that level of comfort. So I look forward to the challenge of that. But really, just anytime you come in to a new community, what an opportunity. I'm just really excited about it, and I think it's important that I take advantage of that opportunity to get to know everyone. And while it'll be a big task, it's one that I'm really looking forward to. There's nothing I enjoy more than meeting new people, because chances are if I'm meeting new people, then that means there's a greater chance I'm going to be able to do great things for kids. So I think that's probably the biggest opportunity coming in that I'll have is getting out and about and building those relationships.
Thank you. Member Sanchez?
I want to say that I got through all my questions, so I'm finished with all my questions.
Member Kraus? Okay, well, I think we all are. We're just grabbing. Okay, so we'll give you an opportunity then to share anything that you'd like to share with us.
I think in closing, with just not to be, you know, too repetitious, but I really do feel like I'm the right leader at the right time for Seminole County Public Schools. You guys are doing some really extraordinary things, and I want to come in assist in a seamless transition in leadership and support the high-quality things that are going on, but also come with a fresh set of eyes to look for ways to enhance the things you guys are doing. The experience that I have in my educational career has truly prepared me to join you guys' organization. And the time I've served as a superintendent gives me a really strong perspective of what it takes to do the job. And I just want to reassure you that if I am blessed with the opportunity to serve this district, that my commitment will be unwavering, and at all times, Seminole County Public Schools and the children we serve will be my greatest priority.
Any other comments, board members? Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth. Thank you, board members, very much. And this concludes the second candidate interview.